It's time for some real education now. The Persistence of Memory is a 1931 painting by Salvador Dali and one of the most recognizable works of art in the world and in the Surrealist movement. Since 1934, the painting has been in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, which received it from an anonymous donor. It is widely recognized and frequently referenced in popular culture, and sometimes referred to by more descriptive titles, such as melting clocks, or the soft watches, or the melting watches. Go to the picture, Mike. This piece is, again, a masterwork of surrealism. It's a movement that goes beyond Impressionism, goes beyond Cubism to create surreal or seemingly lifelike but non-lifelike, or images and tableaus that challenge reality in meaningful ways that almost evoke dreamscapes. The piece here introduced the image of the soft melting pocket watch, epitomizing Dali's theory of softness and hardness, which was central to his thinking at the time, in the early 1930s. As Dawn Aids wrote, the soft watches are an unconscious symbol of the relativity of space and time, a surrealist meditation on the collapse of the notions of a fixed cosmic order. And of course, you would be right to recognize in the early 1930s, and this is a direct response to what was going on with Einstein and the theory of relativity. As Einstein studied more of the Hubble data, as Einstein was able to view more of the universe through these powerful telescopes, the more he was frustrated because, as a logical thinker, if the world was random, if the universe as we understand it was random and chaotic, then the values, the numerical values of that universe ought to be random too. But the more Einstein studied the numbers, the more he saw that they were coherent. Not just coherent, but so specific that in some instances, if you altered the numbers of the universe just a tiny, tiny bit, everything would collapse, which indeed suggested structure and maybe even intention. Well, these melting clocks here, the withering of time, the idea that time itself as a construct isn't real is one of the great surrealist revelations that came in the wake of Einstein's discoveries. It is possible to recognize a human figure if you look hard enough in the composition, in the strange monster with much texture near its face and much contrast and tone in the picture that Dali used in several contemporary pieces to represent himself. The abstract form becoming something of the self-portrait reappeared frequently in Dali's art. He painted himself into his surrealist context. Going back to the Einstein idea of relativity, the interpretation suggests that Dali was incorporating an understanding of the world introduced by Einstein's theory of relativity. Dali replied that the soft watches were not necessarily inspired by the theory of relativity, but by the surrealist perception of a camembert melting in the sun. We go down to take a last look at the portrait here, the picture here. The orange clock at the bottom left of the painting is covered in ants. Dali often used ants in his paintings as a symbol of decay. Time and the melting of time. Ants signify decay. Another insect that is present in the painting is a fly, which sits on the watch that is next to the orange watch. The fly appears to be casting a human shadow as the sun hits it. In the Persistence of Memory, it employs the exactitude of realist painting techniques to depict imagery more likely to be found in dreams and waking consciousness. And so time and the melting of time, the melting of place, what we know as material and scientifically true gets elided in surreal art, and Dali was a master.